It is supremely intriguing that one of my most popular series on YouTube has been my Top 10 Unluckiest NASCAR Drivers series. There has been some confusion, however. Some people think that I didn't rank the top 10 unluckiest drivers, but the top 10 worst drivers. That's not exactly true. The 10 drivers in the Unluckiest Driver Countdown are in fact the unluckiest drivers in all of NASCAR. I even saw one person's playlist having my top 10 countdown and another video claiming that they were the worst drivers. So I'm here to fix that. This is a top 10 countdown by me of the worst NASCAR drivers. Now, before a bunch of you guys start raging out about how supposedly successful Kyle Busch has been, so he ain't one of the worst drivers, here's a little thing here. This is not about the top 10 drivers I dislike the most. If that was the case, Kyle Busch would be number 2 on that list, behind this guy. But anyway, one of the reasons I think Kyle Busch is one of the worst drivers is because of this little saying I once heard. It takes more than just winning races to be a great race car driver. You know, that's actually true. Because think about this. What is the one thing that Kyle Busch does way more than win? He whines a lot. For example, Busch has been well known for raging out against other drivers. It's pathetic. Did you know he's actually one of the few bad guy drivers to not get away with wrecking a fellow bad guy? Yeah, the Ron Hornaday thing in 2011. Why? Well, in 2011, that's the driver NASCAR wanted to see win the championship in the Truck Series. And when Kyle Busch ruined that opportunity because he wrecked Hornaday, Busch got punished for it. Kinda weird, but that's actually what happened. The fact that Kyle whines a lot makes him more of an unworthy driver than most people really realize. Yeah, Kyle wins a lot, but he whines way more. The fact he whines and rages out and has more temper tantrums than even his brother Kurt Busch basically makes him one of the worst drivers in the NASCAR world. Let's face it, at least Kurt is trying to be a good guy. Kyle's nowhere close in that category. And odds are, he never will be either. Honestly, it does not matter the fact that he has won the nationwide championships 2 years straight, for 2 reasons. NASCAR's rule change limiting Cup drivers from competing for the championship, and the fact he lucked out in a whole bunch of scenarios. So with the Roush crew, what can I tell you? But to be honest, and I'm not the only one who'll say this, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is not that good of a race car driver. Do you want to know how most people first found out about Ricky Stenhouse? How about the ARCA finale in 2008 when he had that rage out with Scott Speed, his fellow championship competitor? Because of what Ricky did, and how Scott Speed paid him back, Justin Allgaier won the championship. That's how we also found out about him. That right there should have been a sign saying, the Ricky Stenhouse kid is pretty much of a wacko when it comes to this. Maybe he's not ready yet. Apparently Jack Roush did not learn that lesson. Think back to the year previous to his first championship, 2010. That dude crashed a lot. It got so pathetic, even his own teammate wrecked him once at Texas on Jack Roush's 68th birthday. How bad do you have to be for a teammate to wreck you at a non-restrictor plate track on that kind of circumstance? And I still have no idea why to this day Jack Roush has kept this guy. You'd think he'd eventually learn, but apparently he figured out he's one of those guys he can get away with anything he wants, and other people can get screwed because of it. Believe me, folks, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. ain't that worthy of a driver. See Natwood? Headphones. Number 8 is one of your guys. Let's Let's see if you guys can identify who Dale Earnhardt Jr. is talking about before I end the segment. Go.
Hey, nobody else had any trouble getting by me. I guess that cue ball-headed fool can't get by us without wrecking us.
If you guessed Tubba 9, you're correct. He wrecks more than both his brothers Jeff and Brett combined. He's hated by most race fans. He's even disliked by a whole bunch of his competitors. And he is very whiny about mainly everything. Anytime something happens to him, he will automatically blame someone else for it, even though it is absolutely, positively, 100% Todd's fault. Remember the infamous Nelson Piquet Pocono tirade of 2012? Yeah, that was genius, Bodine. That was totally Piquet's fault. It's totally Piquet's fault that you came down into him. That makes logical sense. And how Bodine has gotten away with the boatload of crap he has caused over the years, I have no idea. Do you want to know why Randy LaJoie nicknamed Bodine the Onion? Because he stinks. If it isn't Mr. Motormouth himself, or as Regis Philbin likes to call him.
We'll be right back with Michael Waltrop.
Sorry, Mikey, but you are by far one of the worst drivers in NASCAR. Not just ones who have won the Daytona 500 twice and the Winston, but basically one of the worst drivers overall. You know why? Well, consider the following. Have you guys realized that virtually all of Mikey's wins have been on luck? Not skill, not talent, luck. Not to mention all of his wins in the Sprint Cup and Truck Series have been on restrictor plate tracks. He only has a few wins on non-restrictor plate tracks, all of those in the Nationwide Series. Very much true. In addition, a driver who's raced for Mikey called him the worst driver. Obviously, he's not the worst owner, but he is one of the worst drivers. In Hinklenboyer. Face it, Mikey belongs in a TV booth where people can actually tolerate him. And that's if they're not fed up by Daryl by now. But anyway, how can people say you're a great driver if majority of your wins are on restrictor plate tracks and all of your wins are based on luck? The 2004 Nashville race that Mikey won, for example, that was based on luck, don't you think? Very much true. So no, Mikey, you're not a good driver. By any sort of the means. You're a good yip-yapper, but you're not a good driver. Isn't it obvious by now that TJ Bell has no place in NASCAR? Think about it. This dude's been in NASCAR for a significant amount of time and has absolutely nothing to show for it. Over his career, he has crashed a bunch of times, has never been noteworthy in anything except crashes, no matter what series he's in, what team he's racing for, and let it be known that he actually has rarely done starting parks. Being a starting park doesn't make you a bad driver. Having rides and still sucking makes you a bad driver. And that's what TJ Bell is. He's the epitome of a bad driver. But if you think he's bad, the top 5, oh, they're worse. See Natwood? Earmuffs. If you look in the dictionary for a worse version of TJ Bell, you would easily find the picture of David Stremme. Here's a guy who has been in NASCAR for over a decade, has never won a race, is very well known for crashing, being an idiot, and apparently is blind as a bat. Yes, he's that bad. In fact, in the eyes of me and my buddies, his claim to fame is proving that he is just as bad as the Payback game as Danica is. And considering Danica's epic fail, how in the world do you butcher Payback so bad you mixed up 2 guys in NASCAR who are total opposites. How in the freakazoid do you do that? Are you that blind? And stupidly enough, he makes up the "my brakes were bad" excuse. If you could perfectly turn in turn 3, how could you not turn in turn 1? You cannot fool people like me. You can't fool the entire NASCAR world. You can't fool other drivers, and you cannot fool the fans. You might be able to fool some people who, for some reason, give you a ride, but that's about it. You're never gonna win. You're a dunce, you're a freakazoid, and you're blind as a bat. You're an idiot who's been here for over a decade and has never won a race. And that's all you're ever going to be. Your skills at the payback game is just as bad as Danica's. And speaking of, the only way you can kind of give TJ Bell a pass is the fact that they've kind of never had a decent ride. Well, here's a news flash. Our number 4 driver has been in a decent ride. In fact, he was a development driver for a big level team. And he still sucks! The driver in this case is Landon Castle. In the mid-2000s, he was hired as a Hendrick development driver. One of the biggest teams in the NASCAR world, maybe the biggest team ever. And what does this idiot do? He totally proves himself a dunce in all the Hendrick cars, and all the rides he's had ever since. He is one of the worst drivers in NASCAR, period. He keeps wrecking, he keeps being a freakazoid about it, he keeps being such a wuss that he's even worse than Kyle Busch. And I'm very hopeful he'll never be in a decent ride again. Here's something else that Castle's known for. Poking the bear. How in the world are you that much of a dunce that you decided to pick a fight with someone who is very well known for having a short fuse? Why in the world would you want to anger Bobby Hamilton Jr. not once, not twice, but 3 times in a single season? That is stupidity beyond belief. Bobby Hamilton Jr. is one of those drivers who will fight you in an instant. And once again, Landon Castle proves his stupidity time and time again. That's why he'll never be a worthy driver. He'll never win in NASCAR. And that is one of the main reasons he will always suck in the minds of race fans. He is one of the few drivers in NASCAR you can actually call a Hendrick dunce, and everyone would agree with you. See Atwood? Earmuffs. That's right, it's now time to talk about the worst of the worst of one of my buddies' crews. Among the 4 drivers in this countdown that my buddies like, this one is the worst of the worst. Can you name any driver whose last name contains the word ick? You pretty much got it right on the nose, didn't you? Brian Vickers? Yeah. It's been a myth among my crew that the so-called one reason I don't like Brian Vickers is because he caused a wreck that injured my favorite driver at my home track at a race I went to. That so is not the case, because of one of my favorite phrases, there's more than one reason for everything. Sure, I don't like Vickers because he injured JB at Richmond, but apparently everyone who thinks that's the only reason has forgotten about this.
Get by! He just can't get enough nose under him without getting into him. Oh, he did get him! Sideways. He spins him in! Vickers wins!
This.
He's getting a little wider.
There he goes, Junior. Oh,
no! This.
Green flag stops prior to that caution. Boy, Brian Vickers, Dale Earnhardt Jr., that ain't gonna work, boys.
And this.
Joey Logano in the 20 and see if he didn't push McMurray into Blaney.
Yeah, then you get back to pit road for some more tires and try it again. Maybe tighten it up a little bit. Oh, when it goes.
But I'm not sure McMurray's going to.
His wheels are right, and he had his brakes locked up, so all of that combined.
It's a big hit for Jamie. Listen. To the caution flag.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're hard to drive like
Holy
that.
cow. You see how high the back of that car came up?
And then he had the brakes on so hard the wheels were hopping.
Yeah, it battled for...
Oh, that's what that was. Matt Kenseth had just come back on the racetrack.
Oh, believe me, there's plenty of reasons that Brian Vickers is not popular with the fans. There's plenty of reasons this guy ain't a good driver. There's plenty of reasons that this guy is a total idiot on the track. Sure, he had a decent 2012. He was a part-timer, that's why. Face it, there's a reason you cannot say the word Vickers without ick. It's because Vickers sucks as a racer. He always has, he always will be, and for those who think JB is my reason for my so-called dislike, face it, Vickers will never be a worthy driver anywhere. He had a shot with Hendrick, and he highly failed. His one win with Hendrick was him taking out Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Talladega. Yeah, that in itself is a fail. And that's what Brian Vickers to pretty much everyone is a fail.
You see this here straitjacket? Brian Vickers not only needs to wear it, he also needs to be locked in a padded room and studied for scientific purposes, so that if anyone in the future suffers from Vickernism, they can be cured.
Vickernism.
We give Brian Vickers his brand new Putter Award, because if there's one thing I know, he sure ain't no driver.
You want a legacy of being a totally unworthy person in NASCAR? Here's a good way to do it. Get a sponsor to sign with you. Show off your money-rich sponsor to different race teams. Race for those race teams. Crash their stuff. Basically, never be a success, never show success, not a slight of brilliance, and worst of all, have your sponsor rip off other teams and scam them out of money. That's right, we're talking about Kevin Conway. This guy is a total douche. He's a total freakazoid. Here is one guy who is less likely to win a race than David Stremme and TJ Bell combined. You want to know how bad this guy really is? In the Cup Series alone, he has driven for 3 race teams. And his sponsor, which by the way is a Viagra ripoff, has scammed all 3 teams because of money issues. Because those guys don't know how to pay off the big bucks to the teams that were hired by them to show off their product on their race cars. Basically, between that particular sponsor and the driver, you can basically call it the Kevin Conman theorem, which realistically isn't a theorem because it's more truth than anything. In fact, one time at Daytona, he even crashed his own teammate! That in itself is pathetic, and he crashed himself along with it. This dude is a total dunce. He will never be successful. Kevin Conway is nothing more than a scam artist. That's all he's ever going to be. That's all he ever will be. That's all he's ever going to be known for. He and his Viagra ripoff can just leave NASCAR because we don't want him in NASCAR. Period. As far as I know, his name is not Kevin Conway. His name is Kevin Conman. Who in the world could be worse than the guy who whines more than wins, a multi-time nationwide dud, the worst of the 3 Bodines, Lucky Motormouth, a guy who can't drive worth a lick, a driver who's blind as a bat, an idiot who thinks angering Bobby Hamilton Jr. is a genius idea, the master of wrecking everyone and getting away with it, and a con artist? Who? 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 Oh, duh! It is too obvious. The worst NASCAR driver, not only in this countdown, not only in the modern era, but forever will be John West Townley. or as me and my buddies like to call him, Sir Crash-A-Lot. Here is how bad John West Townley is. Not only has this guy never won a race, but this guy is even worse. John West Townley is by far the worst driver in NASCAR. This guy is totally pathetic. You want to know how bad he is? You know how much everyone raged out against Ricky Stenhouse in 2010 because he crashed a lot? Here's a news flash. John West Townley in 2009 alone was way worse than Stenhouse. This dude was wrecking every freaking week. A majority, like maybe 3/4 of his finishes in 2009 alone were in the 30s or worse. And by the way, there's only 4 spots worse than the 30s. This guy is a combination of the entire top 9 and their worst traits put into one package. I do not understand how people like him keep getting rides again and again and again, and all these worthy veterans can't. It's pathetic. It's moronic. It's downright stupid. You people who rage out against Paul Menard because his sponsor is his father's company, here's a newsflash. John West Townley's in the same boat. And his sponsor involves chicken. How's that for genius for you? It's the perfect package of stupidity, moronic elements, and a sponsor that pretty much makes sense of it all. Face it. Whether you call him John West Townley or John Rex Weekly, or as everyone else likes to call him, Sir Crash-A-Lot, this guy is by far the worst driver in NASCAR. Not only in today's period, but he'll forever be associated with being the worst driver ever. And that is my final answer.